friends, and happy spring! Woohoo! Spring is here at last, and the weather is much nicer. Yesterday was the last day of winter, and it was crazy cold and windy. Today is much nicer. So, as I said, it's Amy at Doki Forest. What the heck is Doki Forest? I'm so glad you asked, because today we're going to talk about what the heck Doki Forest means and why did I pick that. This is the hashtag, What's in a Name? I was tagged by Tanya at Side Gig Crafts and Ker at My Take at the Lake, and I am going to leave both of their channel info below. So this hashtag, What's in a Name, is hosted by Paper Confessions with Cara Mia and BB's Closet Creations. And what this hashtag is they're asking creators to share their channel name. Why did you pick that name? Where did it come from? What does it mean to you? So the story of Doki Forest began back in 2017. And that's when I was really thinking about how I wanted to do something creative and open up an Etsy shop. And my goal was to sell creations that I was making, and I couldn't decide if I wanted to do like illustrations and sell prints and that sort of thing, or if I wanted to sell clay and resin creatures and charms. At the time, I was really getting into clay. That's what I was watching on YouTube, and that's what I was, playing with at the house. And I was still sketching and drawing and painting now and then, but I was really into the clay. And whichever medium I happened to be using, my subjects were generally the same. I love to do animals in nature, or I love to do magical creatures. And mostly magical creatures. So like flying foxes and dragons and amabies and just made up things that I was creating that I don't even have a name for. So I knew when I came up with my shop name, I wanted it to have something to do with nature, preferably the forest, because I've always felt very drawn to the forest. As a child, my dad and I used to always go for walks, and we would go out. The first thing we would do is we would find a walking stick, and then we would, just go for a walk, and my dad would point out things in nature, and, we always loved to see what birds we could find, what animals we could see. So I love that. That was the whole beginning of my love of nature, came from, my dad sharing so much with me and taking me out for walks. And then the magical creature aspect is I've just always loved creatures, I grew up watching Star Wars movies, and I loved all the creatures and imagination and world building in there. I loved Labyrinth. I loved Legend. Darkness. I thought he was amazing. And then animation, I've always loved as well. Japanese animation, really love. When I was growing up, and then, in the 90s when I watched Sailor Moon, that's a whole different thing. But these are just all like different influences that I had from all different directions. And then on TV, there was like Creature Double Feature when I was growing up, and they were all Godzilla episodes. Usually, sometimes you'd get like a Swamp Thing or something, which I didn't like. But normally it would be like Godzilla, Rodan, and Mechagodzilla, something like that. And I loved that. So whenever I would go shopping for toys, I didn't really want to buy dolls or anything. I wanted to buy creatures. And sometimes I knew what they were from, and sometimes I didn't. But my point being, I have had a deep love of magical creatures just from the get-go. That, nature, forest, and then with Japan, like I said, I had found a book called Rose of Versailles. I did mention this in a previous video, but I found this manga book which had been translated into English, and I just happened to find it at a used bookstore, and I loved it. It had the most beautiful illustrations I had ever seen. So I fell in love with that manga style. There's different manga styles, but just The manga illustrators are just incredible. So I fell in love with the drawings. And then, of course, later on in life, like I said, Sailor Moon, Studio Ghibli, the hallmarks, they all influenced me. So what the heck am I rambling on about? The point being, Doki Doki Forest, when I came up with that name, I knew originally I didn't come up with that, but I just knew I wanted something that had to do with a magical forest. So I was coming up with, different words that meant magical, different words that meant forest or nature, and just trying to use them. I remember I was going to do like a name that had an acorn in it, but it felt like either the names I came up with just didn't sound right or they were already taken. So that was the other problem. I would find one that I would be like, oh, I think this sounds good. And then I would check, like, is that already taken on, Instagram or YouTube or whatever? And it would be. So I would have to change the name. And then and two things too. We would get a crate called Doki Doki Crate, and that was filled with some things from Japan that, you didn't know what was going to be in the box. Usually, sometimes they'd give you spoilers, but it could be little stuffed animals, little cups, all kinds of little things from Japan, and we used to love getting that. And then the other thing was my husband was talking to me about Doki Doki Panic, which is Super Mario 3. It was supposed to be a game called Doki Doki Panic, but then they wound up just slapping Mario and the gang right on top of the original game. So I was kind of surrounded by Doki Doki, even though I didn't think to use that at first. But what is Doki Doki? So that is the onomatopoeia in Japan for the sound of a beating heart. So it's sort of like how we would say thump thump, thump thump. In Japan, it's Doki Doki. So eventually I had this aha moment, and it might have even been when I was talking to my husband about Doki Doki Panic, that I was thinking, well, what about Doki Doki Forest? Because, your heart's beating, you're going into this forest, and you don't know what you're going to encounter. It's a mystery. Is your heart beating with excitement? Is it beating because you're getting a little worried because you don't know what's around the corner, what's up in the tree, what's on the flower? You don't know what's ahead of you. And I loved it. And the other thing about that name is that it sort of describes how I feel about my work, where I also don't know what I'm going to create a lot of the time. I sort of just sit down and sketch or paint. I mean, once in a while I'll have an idea that just pops in my head, or that, maybe I went for a walk that day. I saw a squirrel, super cute, so now I got to come home and I need to draw or sketch that squirrel. But a lot of the time it's sort of random. I just kind of sit down and put some music on. Of course, I have to have music on when I create. And then I just start, doing something. And sometimes I like it. Sometimes I don't. You never know. So I liked that Doki Doki is sort of like my beating heart too. Just like the, ooh, I don't know how this is going to go today, but we're going to go anyway. So, yeah, that's the meaning behind the Doki Doki and Doki Doki Forest. And I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to ask me any questions if you would like. And I would just like to go ahead and nominate 2 other channels if they want to participate. And if not, totally fine. But I would like to ask Just Journaling with Possum Patty. I'm so curious. I know the journaling part, but what's the Possum Patty? So I would love if, she could maybe explain where that came from. And if if you don't have time, that is completely fine. There is no pressure here. That's just if you have the time and you're interested in doing it. And then I would also like to nominate Paper Hoarders Anonymous, because I'm curious about the story behind that. And again, if people are busy, you don't have time, totally get it. There is no pressure. So I hope everyone's enjoying this happy spring. And I want to thank Tanya and Ker for nominating me to share the story. And this right here is a little hummingbird that I just wanted to share with you while you were listening. So thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope you have a great day. I hope you're enjoying this first day of spring. It's sunny here, but it is still windy. But that's okay. We're getting longer days, we're getting some sun, and the birds seem really happy. I heard this barred owl yesterday just hooting away up in the tree, so there's excitement out there. And speaking of birds, our little hummingbird is all done. Hummingbird and tulip and little fay character here for the first day of spring. I hope you have a wonderful day today, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.